Good morning. Thank you for joining me, Jason, today on Behind the Gavel with Jason. Today I'm joined by a good friend of mine and somebody I've known for quite a few years, Shawn Terrel. Shawn, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason. I appreciate it.
A good deal. So Shawn is the president of auction services at United Country Real Estate here in Kansas City. They've been around for 90 some years. And that's the largest integrated land and ag and commercial and not commercial, especially real estate auction company in the world, isn't it? It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's grown and evolved over the last 95 years into something special for sure.
Good deal. Shawn has worked in the auction industry for more than 25 years. He started down in Oklahoma with the Wiggins Auctions. He was chairman and past president of the Oklahoma Auctioneers Association. He's won champion auctioneer in several states. He's been on the National Auctioneers Association Board of Directors. He currently holds a Certified Auctioneer Institute and Accredited Auctioneer of Real Estate designations. He also owns a company called a Mineral and Mining Company, so he's very active in this entire conversation. He has sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of real estate, including over $70 million in one day, which is a pretty good day for, I would think, anybody in the world. And just this past spring, I believe, you were inducted into the Oklahoma Auctioneers Hall of Fame, weren't you?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's right. That was a good opportunity.
Absolutely. And Shawn, one of the reasons I want to have Shawn on and a lot of my other guests is because he's very giving of his time, of his knowledge, and he's helped me a lot over the years. And in fact, they have United Country has a thing called the National Auction Summit coming up just next week, if you're watching this live. And Shawn, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then talk about the National Auction Summit if you want to, and how you got into the auction industry.
Well, as you said earlier, I'm from Oklahoma. I've spent most of my life in Northwest Oklahoma. All of my family are still there for the most part, farming, ranching, small town living out there. So we were custom harvesters growing up. We cut wheat from the lower part of Oklahoma, Texas line all the way to North Dakota every year. And I eventually I transferred from the prison system, believe it or not. I ran a horse training program for the Oklahoma Department of Corrections for about 10 years in conjunction with the Bureau of Land Management. I was a horse trainer and a program supervisor for the Department of Corrections. I transitioned out of that into the auction business full-time quite a few years ago. It's been about 28 years, I guess, that I've been in the auction business, and got an opportunity 15 years ago to move my family up here to Kansas City. At the time to take the vice president's job. Today I've been promoted over the last several years. I was promoted into president of auction services for United Country. So in conjunction with doing that, about 10 years ago, my brother and I have been in the oil and gas business for a lot of years. We rolled out a company called Mineral Marketing is the name of that company. And we sell and do lease negotiations and the outright sale of mineral rights across most major plays inside of the continental United States. We have listings and activities going on anywhere from Texas to Pennsylvania up into the Bakken field up in North Dakota. So just around different geographic areas of the U.S. So busy guy, I guess. I like to stay busy, and I appreciate being on the show this morning.
Absolutely. Well, you know, there's a saying out there, something along the lines of busy people are also the most giving of their time. And I think that seems to be true more and more as I get involved in this. And folks, if you're watching, go ahead and ask questions below for Shawn or myself. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have. But today we're going to talk about ranch properties. And I thought that was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I think you were just coming back from looking at or signing a ranch, and you were doing a Facebook Live, and you mentioned how ranch properties might be the favorite thing of your entire portfolio of work that you do. I was curious, why don't you tell us ranches are kind of mythical. Most people never really experience a ranch. They hear about dude ranches, they think of cowboys and the Old West. Tell us what a modern day ranch is and what makes it appeal to you so much.
Okay. I think a lot of it has to do with that Western heritage. Being from Oklahoma, obviously, there's a long heritage with land runs, land ownership, ranching throughout Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, up through these central states. I've always had a passion for that, the integration of raising and, breeding, raising, and selling, or the disposition of livestock. Not as much in the cattle industry for me personally, more in equine, more in the horse industry and the production of horses. So I'll back up to the training program that I mentioned before, where I worked for the Bureau of Land Management. Obviously, those are wild horses. We had programs and systems that the inmates would gentle those horses down and adopt them out to families. So at any given time, we would hold anywhere from 100 to 400 head of horses at that facility, which is the largest horse training facility by far and away in the state of Oklahoma, just from head count and size. I've always had a passion for that. I've enjoyed that. I like rural America. Farming, for most people that know, or more importantly, don't know, farming's hard work. It's a lot of hours and it's a lot of time. Ranching is the same way. If you have a production ranch with cattle, with horses, with sheep, or whatever type of livestock you're raising on it, it's a lot of hours and a lot of work. But for me, I don't mind the hours. I'm boxed in right now in the office, which is where I tend to be more often than not. I enjoy the opportunity to get out on the ranch and just kind of see God's great country, if you will, and breathe some fresh air. It's a good day out there. So I enjoy that aspect of this business a lot. I was very fortunate to get this job here with United Country because it's the largest rural land seller in the United States. So it kind of allows me to pursue my passion.
Very cool. Yeah, you know what? My grandparents were farmers up in Minnesota. And I remember my mom talked a lot about getting up before the sun came up and working hard for a couple hours. Then there's some, unless it's hard planting a harvest, there's break time. But then you got, milk the cow in the morning, then feed them. And it's an all day deal every day. There's no vacation from it. It's all day every day. But very, very, very rewarding. So, what kind of, in today's world, what kind of person, obviously you're from Oklahoma, you enjoy it, you grew up in it. Is that the kind of your main buyers now, people looking for ranches now, is people who grew up in it, or is it something else? Is there a mix of buyers? What's the general buyer outline of a client today?
Something interesting that's happened that shed a lot of light on that industry lately is COVID-19, this pandemic that's hit. It's been well publicized, obviously, in the media. Creates a little bit of, I don't know if it's panic, because there's not people just stepping on people in the streets. It's not mass pandemonium, but it has created a sense of urgency for, I think, a demographic that otherwise may have been a little bit more settled where they're at, to prompt them to move outside of urban America. So while a lot of industries out there are struggling, restaurant industries, bar industries, places where you get your hair cut, just general places where people tend to gather or organize, that had to operate either to very limited extents or not operate at all in this pandemic. The land business, we've seen a tremendous uptick. So in the 95, 96 year history of United Country in July, we had the highest record month in company history in land sales. Wow. And the books just came in. Now we're not talking about a few $1,000s in sales, because the company, collectively United Real Estate Holdings Group sold $8 billion worth of real estate last year. It's a very large company. 27% increase year over year is a significant amount of money for this company, and a lot of rural real estate that's being transferred. The month of August looks like it could possibly have topped that. We're still tallying the books on August, but it looks like we may have beat our best record month in company history, which would make it the second best after August now. So we're seeing we're seeing an interesting dynamic of shift in the non-urban markets, and the rural marketplace is getting a lot of attractiveness, a lot of attraction from urban markets, and that populace moving outside of the city limits.
Interesting. When I was doing some reading before we talked, I saw the National Association of Realtors had an August 4th report that they, amongst all of their brokers they spoke to, they expected a 1 to 2% increase in land and ranch sales, but obviously it sounds like you're doing much better than that. So,
you know, for month over month, July was roughly about a 27% increase in land sales. So that's tremendous. That's well above 2%. When you average that over across the entire year, it won't be that strong year to year, but that particular month and the previous months leading up, plus last month, it's a key indicator that we're definitely on the incline right now as a company. Strong sales are very strong. Franchise sales are very strong. We've moved from selling 30, 40 offices a year in rural America. We're selling now 60 offices a year. So the reason that that's happening is a lot of people are affiliating because we're starting to see the markets come into rural America, which is what answers your question, what the impact is and what we're seeing as a stereotypical buyer that's looking for rural property, whether that's a small hobby farm or a larger ranch. It's a little bit of a different audience right now. It's not just that normal ranch buying audience. Some of it are property owners that's always had that non-urban lifestyle dream. It's now forcing them to take action on it.
Right. And you mentioned hobby farms to big ranch. Are you seeing demand in one specific type of ranch over another, or is it just anything and everything that has land is having more interest right now?
That's a good question. You're always going to see more demand for the smaller farms because of the capital it takes to carry that note or to carry that acquisition. So sure. $100,000 or a $300,000 farm is something that's affordable or obtainable to most of Americans. Buying a $3 million ranch or a $5 million and above ranch, larger ranch disposition sales, unless those are cut into smaller parcels and subdivided, selling the entire ranch or the ranch in its entirety for that kind of a price, it's a much smaller percentage of the audience that could even participate in that if they wanted to. And then at any given time, you're looking for prospects out there that are ready to buy a ranch in that location at that time. So that market always moves slower. Mm-hmm. If you have a $5 million ranch for sale, you could expect to sit on that ranch for a year or so to find the right buyer to come in and to purchase that ranch. If you have a $300,000 farm, you may sell that within a 90-day window.
Okay. Very, very cool. And you mentioned just a little bit ago about you've like doubled your franchise sales, and obviously United Country, like any other real estate company, has the main office and franchises around the country. Were your sales of franchises expanding before COVID? Or is this a direct response to COVID?
We saw some immediate slowdown with the regulations that were imposed in COVID-19. So I'd say the first quarter, second quarter franchise sales slowed down. Most of the reports I did were on 2019 sales in previous years. We're not sure exactly where we're going to be according to plan in 2020 yet. I would say we're probably a little bit behind that plan because we had 2 quarters where the restrictions for example, if we wanted to travel into New Mexico right now, they have a 14-day, what do they call it, isolation period where you have to prove that you have sat idle away from everybody for 14 days before you can actually go out and start publicly kind of doing business there. Well, it makes it very difficult to fly in and fly out of that state. And there's several states. New York has enacted that as well as some others. So it's going to slow our sales down a little bit this year for franchise sales. But amazingly enough, the office selling real estate, the actual farm and ranch and rural real estate sales, they're up dramatically.
Really? That's very interesting. I had a question along those lines. I've just been in one ear, not the other. That's it happens as you get older, right?
So to distinguish between those two, Jason, franchise sales are selling a business office to a broker that's going to operate under this umbrella. But the sales that are up dramatically and doing well, those are the brokerage offices listings. As you were a realtor, you know exactly how you take a listing and sell a listing, same as auctions. Those numbers are up dramatically right now.
Very interesting. Very cool. I want to thank Mercedes for watching. She's in California. She watches a little bit. She's saying hi to Shawn and to me. So thanks for watching. And please, anybody watching, go ahead and post comments or questions below. That'd be awesome. So how many franchises does United Country have?
Roughly about 500. 500. We'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 offices, and that'll transition for 20 to 30 offices at any given time. 470, 530, but we've been somewhere in that that's kind of the sweet spot right now for the company.
And are there areas of the country that you're more densely populated, like per capita, or is it kind of spread out pretty broad?
We are spread out broad. We're in 40 plus states. The company is in 40 plus states. I should know that number off the top of my head as a president in here, but 41, 42 states, I believe, coast to coast, north to south. We have heavy concentration of offices in some areas, and then we're a little bit more sparsely. We don't have near the density in Utah, for example, or Nevada. We may only have 2 offices there, where you go into Colorado, we may have 25 or 30 offices.
Okay. Red hot on fire. I don't know if she's talking about the real estate or the actual fires out there in California, because that's obviously an interesting thing to be paying attention to. What do you see in the future? Obviously, as COVID is around for a while, and it doesn't matter what your thoughts or beliefs are on it. The reality is we have this pandemic around. It's going to be here for a while. What do you see? How do you see it affecting your business, short term and long term? I mean, real estate is kind of known for having bubbles in different areas. Is this going to be a bubble in the ranch industry, or is it going to be a new plateau? Or have you guys thought about that?
Yeah, well, it's a distractor. Clearly it's a distractor. I mean, much like Mercedes is talking about the fires right now, things like that causes everybody to stop focusing on buying and selling real estate because there's something detrimental in front of them right now. The pandemic, when it first launched, when it was first released, those numbers were astronomical. I mean, it was scaring people of even just literally coming out of their house. Mm-hmm. I think those numbers have been relaxed a little bit. It's people are starting to get a little bit more accustomed to it, yet still, respecting that there's a virus, that COVID-19 is out there. So, I've got the do-rag, if you will, here around my neck. I pull up over my face. I can still breathe through it to go to lunch and to go into public places. But anytime you come across anything like that, I'll give you another example. Is back when the World Trade Towers, when we had the airplanes, the attacks here in the U.S. on September 11th. I had an auction that morning in Oklahoma, in a small town, and at the time it was happening, we were having our auction at 10 a.m. that morning. I forget. I want to say, was that a Wednesday possibly, but whatever day it was during the week, we're having an auction, and it had just occurred. But it was so new that people didn't really know anything about what was going on. They would go out and listen to the radios for a little bit and say, well, that sounds pretty bad. They would come back in. We would conclude the auction, they're bidding, and we sold the property. It didn't really affect the sales prices at the time. We didn't have, it was a distractor that day, but it was happening right then.
Right.
But within a week or two later, to sell property, there was some serious effects on the land market right out of the gate, where people just kind of stopped showing up, and they got very cautious about what's going on in this world, what's going to happen, and it stalled the economies for a while when that happened. Mm-hmm. So those kind of distractors are always going to impact your bottom line, they're going to disrupt business. With that being said, I think people they become accustomed to it. They learn how to navigate, and they realize, well, the world's still going to go on. Business is still going to continue. And right now, I think that's where we're at with COVID-19. In the first and second quarter, we felt just a little bit of tightening maybe in the market, but it's really fueled our fire in this business. It's driven a lot of people to non-urban America. So we're reaping the benefits. I think we'll make up for all of the loss, plus still have a very successful year in Q3 and Q4.
Yeah, we're seeing kind of the same things in the antiques and decorative arts markets too. And that same, 9/11 had the exact same effect as you're talking about. That next couple of months, everybody was just scared. Like it was just, like you said, there was a distraction. nothing else was nearly as important as figuring out what was happening next. And that kind of was one of the first things that reset the antique market, because it was on fire for a long time. It was racing, going really strong. And then it just all of a sudden people were like, whoa, I don't necessarily need to have all these things. And it really changed that world. As an auctioneer, you understand that, and you know that completely, because you do real estate, but you also do all kinds of other auctions and have over your career.
Yes. You know, what's interesting about that, Jason, is if you ever see fish in a pond and you throw a rock in, the fish, they all scatter real quick. They stay away. And then gradually they'll start kind of coming back. I spoke one time, and somebody had used this analogy about a bar shooting, of all things. And they said it was just a little old mom and pop bar. There was an argument, 2 in the morning. Somebody got shot, got killed on the street, and just killed the business in this bar. I mean, for the next month, there was maybe 2 people in it where it's normally packed. But over the course of that month, a couple more started showing back up. And within 60 to 90 days, you go back to that bar and it's packed again. It's that initial shock. It's that initial reaction. It takes a while for people to process that, to build some, you know, the immediate resistance is get away from it. You know, that's how I'm going to defend against it. They become not immune to it, but aware, and they build their comfort level of how they're going to navigate around that. And then eventually it's business as usual, with some modifications. I don't know that it'll ever be business as usual after COVID-19, but that's not all bad. I think it forced a lot of companies, even like ours, how to focus on distance learning, distance communication, things like what we're doing right now. We weren't doing near as much virtual training as we are today in our company. We see the benefits of it. So 5 years down the road, this company will be a better virtual trainer for that portion of the business and it's kind of forced us to look at it that way.
Yeah, and we've done so many different things here. Doing interviews was a direct result of COVID, because I had time to look at some things that I wouldn't normally have a chance to look at and make those modifications in the business. And I think most businesses that have some sort of revenue coming in and can get through that adjustment period are doing very similar things. But like you said, there's certain, you know, we have colleagues in other businesses that are not going to make it and haven't made it. And that's always a tough thing to see our friends struggle through that.
Yes, sir.
So you talked about doing the digital learning. Let's go back to the National Auction Summit real quick. I'll put the website on there if people are interested. Tell us a little bit more about that. I know you guys have done things like this before, but this is obviously, is this all online this year? You've done actual summits in person before, right?
It is online this year. This is the first year, so this will be our 14th year of the National Auction Summit, and this is the first year that we've done totally virtual. And again, it goes back to the COVID-19 restrictions, the things that are in place. Normally hold that here in Kansas City. This year, we have decided to scale it back. And here's the reasoning behind that. We're scaling it back because if you were to ask me, could you be on a podcast this morning? Could you get interviewed on Behind the Gavel? I said, yeah, absolutely. How much time? 30 minutes, an hour? Absolutely. I'm glad to do it. Could you be on there for 6 hours? No. You're not. I'm not going to sit and watch a screen or take training for 6 hours today. And you're not going to hold my attention that long if you wanted to. So being cognizant of that, we understand that. We've scaled this back to 2 one-hour blocks of training on Monday morning from 10 to 11 and 11 to 12. And then Tuesday morning from 10 to 11, 11 to 12. So you're going to get 4 hours of training broke up into 2 mornings. And I think 2 hours is not unreasonable. A lot of people would stay engaged and watch training for an hour class and then a second hour, come back the second day, do the same thing. I'm looking forward to it. It's been extremely well received. Our normal attendance at the National Auction Summit is somewhere in the 80 to 120 or 30 auctioneers in any given year. We have well over 200 people have already registered for the online virtual this year. So we're pretty pumped up about that.
Excellent. And what are the specific topics that are going to be addressed and looked at?
We're going to talk about, let me bring that up real quick. So the agenda, Jason, we're going to talk on Monday. I'm going to the course topics here. We have starting off drone on demand. So Mr. Patrick McBride with Drone on Demand is going to talk about drone marketing, the new FAA rules and regulations, and then best practices and techniques for production techniques for starting video and capturing video, how to edit photos and make sure that you're shooting, you know, with the sun instead of facing the sun and things like that. The 11 to 12 sessions, Mike Branley. And Mike Branley's going to talk specifically about bankruptcy auctions. Now, why we feel that we polled our audience, auctioneers across the country, and they came back and said, these 4 topics are very important to us. These were the 4 highest ranking ones. The reason bankruptcy auctions, I believe, are taking stage in this country right now is because of the COVID-19 restrictions. Shutting down a lot of businesses, a lot of small mom and pop businesses, or starting up or undercapitalized businesses, restaurants, bars. Again, a lot of the places we talked about earlier, those unfortunately are not going to make the cut. There's going to be a lot of FF&E or furniture, fixtures, equipment, and assets, as well as the real estate that may need to be sold out of those. So I think it's good timing for the bankruptcy session. We'll come back on Tuesday. I'm going to give a class myself on effectively negotiating auction commissions. We're going to talk specifically about strategies where you can strengthen your commission, hold your commission when you're competing against discount or price cutting agencies out there that are willing to do it for half price or less, how you can hold your commissions, and also some strategies where you can elevate your existing commission to get a better commission out of your business and how to evaluate that. And then lastly, Mr. John Schultz with Graph Auctions. John's always highly sought after. He's going to talk about Google marketing for real estate and for auctions. So those 4 classes, I think, over Monday and Tuesday are going to be very well received. Yeah,
and great speakers that we've had Mike on. I've had Mike on the show before. I will probably have John on at some point because those guys, and like yourself, you know your topics like the back of your hands. And we've talked for hours and hours and hours about these things over the years, and it's never boring. It's never, you're always great and gracious with the information you share. And I appreciate you doing this today.
Oh, this is wonderful. It's easy to talk about it if you love it, right?
So. Right. And auctioneers never have auctioneers really have a hard time filling the air with words. It's something I've gathered and known for a long time. You know, Shawn, we had a great conversation. Thanks for coming on. I always like to give my guests a couple of minutes at the end to talk about anything they want to, whether it's about their business, the business at large, anything that's affecting them or see coming down the pike. Just a couple minutes for you to just kind of have the floor and tell people a little bit more about what you want to tell them about today.
You know, I think it's I'm from rural America, and there'll be a lot of people that are in urban America that may or may not be able to relate to this, but we see some migration from urban to non-urban America. I think it's a wonderful time to focus on your business, on strategies to attract those people and get in front of them and to capitalize on it. These markets appear, they dissipate just as fast. And it's that analogy about throwing the rock in the pond. The fish go away and then they'll gradually come back. Well, the inverse of that happens. Right now, they're all attracted to maybe a product or a type. COVID-19 will pass eventually. People will go back to business, and this urban sprawl that we're experiencing right now out into rural America may or may not be as strong a year or two from now. So right now is the time to capitalize on that. Listings are always key in this business, and we're very high on listing strategies. If you build it, they will come. So once you have the listings, the buyers tend to show up. But we've been very blessed in here in the rural property business. It's not just land. I love to focus on land, but we sell a lot of lifestyle properties as a business. We are a leading seller in this company, or excuse me, in this country and in this company for bed and breakfasts across small town America, commercial properties. We've sold bowling alleys and barber shops and grocery stores in small town America. So we have a lot of fun over here, Jason. I could talk forever about what I do and how I do it, But I think the thing I'd leave you last with is support your local associations, State Auctioneers Association, your National Auctioneers Association. They've been very good to us in our business also. So
good to know. And folks, if you're watching, you have questions for Shawn, you want questions about United Country, there's a lot of information on unitedcountry.com. If you want to reach out to Shawn directly,sterrell@unitedcountry.com. Shawn's great at responding and getting back with you. You can also follow United Country on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And if you want to call them directly, 1-800-900-1020. All those ways to contact them. And Shawn or his staff, agents, will be happy to get back with you and answer any questions that you have, whether that's starting a franchise, being an agent, or looking to buy or sell properties that he talked about. And like I said, Shawn and his company represent some of the best people in the industry, and I'm glad you could make it. And one last plug for the National Auction Summit, great opportunity to learn about the industry from recognized experts from your home, and it's all free.
Yeah, I was going to mention we charge for that every year. It's $200 to $300 per person, plus the travel, the hotel. This year, all that training that we're bringing in and we're paying under United Country's underwriting that for the speakers, it's free. It's 100% free as an auctioneer. And these are the same people that you'd pay $800-900+ to go to an event and listen to them speak. So I would encourage you to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. I will probably look at my schedule and see if I can't make some this weekend myself. For everybody watching, Mercedes and others who are watching around the country, thank you all so much for watching Behind the Gavel with Jason today. Had a great conversation with Shawn. If you have questions for me or our company or our show, you can always email us at info@kcauctioncompany.com. Give us a phone call at 816-283-3633. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter now. We're kind of getting all over the place. Again, thank you so much, Shawn, for joining us. And have a great weekend. Good luck with your continued success with your business, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jason.